the ultimate guide to the Carousel draft in Teamfight Tactics.
Hey buddy, watch this.
Before we learn anything else, you need to know the hotkey Control and 3 so that you can make your little legend join the spamming chorus in every draft round. Now let's talk about prioritization, selecting the most important things in a given draft. This is my heuristic for your draft selections. Now, this is not always going to hold true in every single game. There are always exceptions. The idea behind this heuristic is that you won't always be able to take the item you want. Your first choice will often be selected by others. So you'll have to make really quick decisions in the moment, and having a rough understanding of what you should prioritize can really help you achieve that. Now, you'll note there that units themselves ranked very low on that list, because I think in the Carousel draft, you should usually be focusing on items instead. With that note, let's walk into these in more detail. Spatula, if you have one. Of course, getting a second spatula can go a long way because it will enable you to add an extra unit to your team. Not only does this give you raw additional stats on the field, but can also open up a lot more synergy opportunities. Now, do keep in mind, if you're like in the final round and you don't have enough spare gold to buy an additional unit, this may not be worth it. But in most cases, throughout the early to mid game, you're going to be able to accrue the resources, put those additional units on field, and find that additional synergy. So this one goes a really long way towards improving your composition more than anything else. Number 2, tier 2 items. Now, this is fairly rare, but on occasion you will see already combined items on a unit in the Carousel draft. And usually those are going to be your best choice. Now, to be fair, there are some tier 2 items that just aren't very good. And to know the difference, you're going to have to recognize the icons. So this will require a little bit of game knowledge. But in most cases, the tier 2 items are still going to be better than a tier 1 item that you're going to have to upgrade. Number 3, combinable tier 1 items. So for instance, if you already have a giant's belt sitting and waiting to be combined, and you see, say, a recurve bow in the Carousel draft, I would encourage you to grab that recurve bow so that you could create a Titanic's Hydra, one of my favorite items in the game right now. If you're constantly tracking what items you already have and know the strongest upgrades or the things that will enable you to create carry-style characters, then you can go to the Carousel draft and grab some really powerful things, pretty much ignoring what unit they're on, but just looking for the item combination specifically. Number 4, your first spatula. I still think it's important to get a spatula, even if you don't have a second, say from a creep round item drop. Just having that one spatula can enable you to make decisions in future Carousel drafts where you can grab that second spatula, and they are not always the most contested items, so in some cases you won't even have competition necessarily, so you can sneak in that double spatula. Beyond that, the spatula still has use cases even if you don't find a second one. Sometimes adding that additional glacial synergy with a giant's belt can still be worth it, or maybe you need another assassin or another knight. And there are also some cool items like Runon's Hurricane, which is available as well when you combine with a Negatron Cloak to increase your DPS. So the spatula has flexibility beyond just double spatula, and that's why I think it's still a priority to get when you can. Number 5, good tier 1 items. And of course, everyone's definition here of good items is going to differ, and it can differ based on your composition in a given game. For me, I think Recurve Bow and BF Sword are probably the highest priority items. I also like the Needlessly Large Rod and Giant's Belt for some specific combinations that tend towards me. I'm a little less into Chain Vest and Tear of the Goddess, perhaps particularly with Tear of the Goddess because I have less sorcerer or mana-driven compositions. But if you have something that's requiring mana, of course, Tear of the Goddess could be the best option for you too. When I say good in this scenario, what I mean is good for you in a given game, and you're going to have to use your discretion there. Number 6, key unit upgrades. Although I think items should usually be a priority, if somehow nothing else is lining up and you have nowhere to go, or of course other people have already taken the items you want, then you can just go for a key unit or a key unit upgrade, particularly if you have 2 of something, 2 Dravens on your bench and you see a Draven. Obviously a Draven can still be worth it, but perhaps not worth more than items to empower your Dravens in the future. And the reason that I put units lower than items is because you're going to be offered a lot of units throughout the course of the game, but you only have a limited number of instances where you're offered items, and those are much more random, and you don't have as much control over how many you see. So prioritizing units in the carousel draft doesn't make sense when items are really the special prize. That's why, although unit upgrades might seem really important, outside of, the last final rounds where you're struggling to stay alive, usually items are going to be a much better thing to build around than a unit that you'll probably see down the road anyway. Number 7, other tier 1 items, and in this case, if you don't have that, Tear of the Goddess or BF sword that's building towards whatever specific build you're looking for, then you can grab a Negatron cloak. You can grab a chain vest, and those will still be okay. Sometimes you just have to take whatever's left, particularly if you're in a leading advantage and you have the last choice in the carousel draft. You just got to take something. And then finally, at number 8, if nothing else somehow works out for you, the final strategy you can take is just to grab the highest cost unit and then just hope to sell it for the maximum gold. So if there's a 5 cost unit, even if you don't need it, just selling it for 5 gold will pay off more than grabbing a random 2 cost unit if they both have equally unuseful items. So in this case, this is your just last ditch effort to find some kind of value out of the carousel draft. So now that we've walked through that heuristic, I have a few other tips for the carousel draft I want to throw your way. At the very first carousel draft in the game, you have control of your little legend before the barrier is removed. So you can begin running around the circle early, lining up a particular unit or item that you like. Another note on this one is that units with items will spawn in circular fashion one at a time, leaving a final gap. Typically that spatula is in that final gap. So if you move your little legend towards that final gap, you can sometimes snatch the spatula, even if someone was much closer originally. So that's a little bonus tip that will help on occasion. Don't try to leave your circle too early. If you get sneaky and try to time it perfectly and miss, your little legend will be pushed to the back of your circle instead of the front, offering a little bit of penalty for trying to sneak out the gate before it's your time. Just line up there on the edge, and while paying attention, click out as soon as you see that circle dissipate. Don't be scared to run through the draft. I see a lot of people only running around the outside edge, but if there is a gap that has been opened, it's often much more direct of a path to go through that gap towards the unit on the other side instead of trying to walk all the way around the outer circle. An advanced strategy that I didn't include in my prioritization heuristic is that sometimes it might be worth it to steal items from an enemy. If you know that there's an enemy that's looking for a very specific upgrade or an item, you've been scouting and keeping an eye on their team, then stealing that unit from them could be more important than getting something valuable of your own. This is a risky maneuver because it may backfire, they may have other options, you may not even understand their strategy completely, but if you have a good idea and you want to go for it, it's certainly a possibility. Finally, just have fun. The carousel is important, but it's not going to win or lose you games outright. There are other ways to succeed. So if things don't go your way in a given draft, it's all right. And that wraps it up for our guide to the carousel draft in Teamfight Tactics. If you have any other tips you'd like to share with the community, of course, put those in the comments below. We're all happy to see them. If you enjoyed this video, I'd certainly appreciate you drop a like, maybe even consider subscribing. We'll have more Teamfight Tactics guides in the future. But until then, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.